Well, hello once again. This is Pastor Don Wolf from Cornerstone Worship Center in Vestaburg, Michigan, the heart of Michigan. And today I am privileged and honored to be on location here in, where are we anyway?
Muskegon.
Muskegon. Yeah, don't ask me to spell it. In Muskegon, and we're at a special place, and I am talking to, see, she put a name tag on there so I had to remember. So today we got Sara Johnson, and this is Project Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an honor to be here, and you've taken us around and showing us different things that you do. And first of all, can I ask you, what's your background to be here?
Yeah. So my personal background,
Yeah.
how I got involved with the Hope Project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I ended up studying social work
Mm-hmm.
in college. And while I was studying social work, I learned about the issue of human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Someone told me that there were more slaves today than any other time in history.
I've heard that, yes.
And I was like, no way. What? And then they talked about what human trafficking was. And for me, I was like, well, if this is truly happening, then I need to learn more about it. And as I did some more research, that's when God got a hold of my heart. And he just wrecked me for victims.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed a prayer. It's a dangerous prayer to pray. You might have prayed it before. But I said, God, would you break my heart for the things that break your heart? And
Didn't use those words, but I know what you're talking about.
He wrecked me.
Yes.
And so I basically said, whatever I can do, God, I'm in. Whatever that looks like. And so I went to school in Texas at Baylor University.
Okay.
Moved back home to Muskegon, Michigan, not knowing how I was going to get involved in anti-trafficking work. And met a woman in Grand Rapids while I was at a Bible study. And I was telling her what I wanted to do, and I felt called to open up a home someday for women who've been trafficked. And she goes, oh, you have to meet my friend who's doing that in Muskegon. And I'm like, in Muskegon, in my hometown, there's an organization that helps fight human trafficking. She goes, yes. And so came back here, and back then we had a thrift store. And so I started volunteering at the thrift store. And this was back in 2010, so I've been around for a while now. And then one thing led to another, and they eventually hired me on staff. So I've been here going on 14 years, which is crazy. But it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful how when you really got something in your heart that you really want to do,
Mm-hmm.
God opens the doors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell a quick story of what happened last night because I thought this was wonderful.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with trafficking.
Yeah.
After work, I told my wife, I said, when we go out and eat, I have to go fill up the car up with gas, and we'll just go eat something. And we went to the restaurant, sat down, made our order, and they just brought the food to our table. And I looked up, and walking in was a couple that's a little older than us. Yes, that's possible. And we didn't know it, but he had just got out of the hospital,
Okay.
and they was waiting for a prescription, so they decided to come eat. So we got up and asked them to sit with us, and we had a beautiful evening, and that's what I call a God-prepared meeting.
Okay.
And that's what you had.
Yes,
And
I did.
God opens the doors through strange ways
Mm-hmm.
to put us where we can enjoy life,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so, how long you been in this building here?
So we've been in here a little bit over 5 years
Okay.
in this building. Yeah.
Now, it was a house.
Yeah. Yes, this was originally a house, but then it's been a lot of different businesses before we were here.
I noticed it's got a lot of offices, and it's got rooms to minister to people.
Yeah.
Now, what is your main object here? Maybe that's not a bad word. What is it you hope to do?
Mission?
Yeah, mission, thank you.
Yes, our mission. Well, we support the healing of girls and women who survive sex trafficking, and then we work to prevent further cases through mentoring and education. Ultimately, we want to see trafficking end, right? Especially the suffering from sex trafficking to end. And So we provide healing opportunities. We can't do the healing for them, but those who come into our doors, we create opportunities
Right.
for them to experience healing after they've experienced tons of trauma they've gone through. So that we have therapists here, we have support groups, we have therapy-led support groups, we do recovery groups too, because some trafficking can be very closely linked with drug addiction. And so we have a recovery group that meets, and then we also have a mentor program because we realize we also want to prevent trafficking
Right.
from happening. So we also mentor girls who are vulnerable, and that typically starts at age 11 years old where we have that program. And so we have volunteer mentors that meet with the ladies. And then as you saw, we have a shower and also a laundry here too for girls on the streets who need some extra help.
And a kitchen.
Yes, and we have a kitchen. And then another thing that we're working on too, well, we're working on opening up a youth home.
Oh, really?
For girls who've survived sex trafficking. But then we also have an adult home too for adult women who've gone through it. Yeah.
Now, if I'm out there and I'm involved in, I'm a girl now, and I'm a girl out there and I'm involved.
Well, you could be a boy out there too. We also help
Well,
boys
that's
too.
true.
Our main
Okay.
mission's girls, but we'll help boys
But
as well.
involved in this crime,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted help.
Yeah.
How could I get hold of you, or?
Yeah. So you could reach out to us a lot of different ways. You could contact us through Facebook because a lot of girls will have access through social media.
Right.
They could call us, which is 231-747-8555, and set up an appointment to meet with us.
Okay.
But also, like if you didn't know our number, but you had the human trafficking hotline number, it's a national number.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so we're on that database for the National Human Trafficking Hotline, so
I
they can
learned
call
something.
that.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
did
and we've
not
had
know
girls
that.
call that number.
Mhm.
I've gone to meet with the girls, and we've been able to help them get to safety and
Yeah.
get them home back to their original state that they were trafficked.
This may be a question you may not want to answer, and that's fine.
Okay.
If some girl calls you and say, I need help.
Yeah.
And you agree to meet them somewhere,
Uh-huh.
do you have any fear that you could get harmed in some way?
It depends where I'm going to meet them.
Well, I'm sure that's part
It
of
depends,
it.
yeah. So we would definitely have like a neutral place
Yeah.
to meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we have to be wise too.
Oh,
And
sure,
we have our
sure.
staff, and we don't want anybody
Yeah.
endangered.
Well, now, how do you meet your expenses here?
Through a variety of ways. Individual donations.
Mhm.
Churches will give us funding. We have some grant funding too.
Oh, okay.
And we also do fundraisers as well.
What kind of fundraisers?
So we have a fundraiser in the fall. It's called a Masquerade Ball. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be November 16th this year. And so people get dressed up and they come out for a night of dancing and they hear a presentation about the Hope Project and they give money. So that's the biggest thing, right? Yeah, so that's one of them. And then we'll do different little fundraisers
Okay.
here and there. And some people will do fundraisers for us as well.
You had mentioned something about having the shops where you sell used stuff and things.
Uh-huh.
Do you still have that?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Okay. Well, I think before we leave, you should. Well, you have our address, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because let us know when you're going to have the fall.
Sure.
I'm not saying we'll be there, but we can at least.
Hey, you might though. You can.
We might.
Yeah.
We do go to one in Clare
Okay.
in October, which they have every year, and of course that's good food.
Yeah.
You notice I got a one-track mind.
We have really good food too at ours.
Do you?
We do. Yes. People actually comment how good the food is. Yeah. And we also have a silent auction as well, so you can usually leave with something.
I think they did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't make it last year because was I sick?
Everybody was sick last year.
Yeah, everybody. So we didn't. But otherwise, we bought a table though. So yeah. How would you? I don't know how to word this. If somebody really wanted out of their situation.
Mhm.
And you were attempting to help them out,
Mhm.
and yet you knew there was a extremely dangerous situation. How would you handle that?
We would get law enforcement involved.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so we don't do the rescues.
Okay,
You know,
all right.
we don't do that.
Oh,
So ours is just aftercare.
Aftercare,
Really,
okay.
yeah. So sometimes we'll get tips on different situations where we'll hear about trafficking is going on, or someone suspects trafficking is going on. Then we get a hold of law enforcement.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so we're actually part of a task force, the Lakeshore Human Trafficking Task Force, and we're part of a Newaygo County Task Force and a Michigan Human Trafficking Task Force. So we have a lot of different connections, and so we let other people do the rescue. That's
Well,
we got to
yeah.
know our lane, right?
Oh, right.
And so, but we will support them when they come out, and sometimes they'll call us, and then we'll get the right people involved to help make that happen,
Right.
and then we're part of the aftercare
Right.
with getting the right resources. So they might need to go to a shelter. We are not a shelter, but one of our biggest values is collaboration, and so we partner with the local shelters here to get girls in their program
Yeah.
so they can get to safety.
Yeah, I notice you don't have facilities for people to stay here.
Mhm. Yeah, no, not at this building.
Right,
No.
right.
And our home is really a healing home, a transitional home. And so it would be a step after a shelter. So our home isn't for emergencies.
You're right.
It's really for those ladies who are truly trying to work on their healing and they want to see a therapist, or maybe they're working to get their kids back, or whatever goals that they have. It's a healing home to help them get to the next step that they want.
This, again, this is a question me, I don't want
Yeah.
to answer because of safety or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many women do you minister to every year?
Sure. So last year it was a little bit over 150
Wow.
girls and women.
You were
Yeah.
busy.
We were.
How
We
long?
were busy.
And I know this is very also, but
Uh-huh.
as a general rule, how long do you minister to them before they can be set free, if I can put it that way?
You know, it varies
Yeah.
on what their level is of involvement they want with us. You know, for some girls, okay, let me go back a bit too, because some of the girls and women are coming to us immediately out of a trafficking situation. Others of them, it happened to them 20 years ago, and they're still having nightmares, and they just need help with healing. And so we'll help them with counseling, or they can get involved in a support group. So it's really a variety of those we serve, and depending on when the trafficking happened or if they're a vulnerable youth. And it just depends how much they want to get involved. So we have a lot of different avenues for them for healing, but sometimes they might just want a hygiene bag. So we provide hygiene products for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some girls who are still out on the streets, and some are still prostituting, but they're not being trafficked anymore. But we're still a support for them because they know they can come here and be a safe place for them. And so when they ever do want help or want to get out of that lifestyle, they know we're here for them. You know, so it varies. So some women have been with us for years, like almost since we've started. And then others are just here once in a while, but they know they can always come back and receive help.
It's really more involved than I imagined. But we do work closely with Teen Challenge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and I should say
wonderful.
Closely, but we have them every year, and we go to their
it's a great program.
promotional dinners and all that. And they have they deal with people similar to what you do, but
we'll get referrals from Teen Challenge.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But they do have I think it's 9 months that they can stay in there, and then it's. But I think they're always there to minister to them if they call them or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I don't know about I got my wife and our general manager here with me, but did you two have any idea what this all involved?
No.
It's I know it's a major problem. Now I asked you before how you got involved in this. How big of a problem is it in Western Michigan?
Yeah, the trafficking?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And part of that we don't fully know because we don't have all the data.
Right.
You know? But is it happening here? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have people who are addicted to pornography in your town, you will have sex trafficking in your town.
Oh, really?
Because wherever there's a demand, it's a business, right? So where there's demand, there's going to be
Right.
the supply, right?
Right.
And so sadly, there's a greater demand for victims, and there are enough victims to meet that demand.
That's
If we
probably
think about
good.
that.
That there is
But
enough.
yeah,
victims.
and that's why people get it sold,
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again.
Right.
And so we got to work on decreasing the demand for it because, I mean, it's awful that people are actually wanting to buy a human to do something terrible to them, right? But it usually starts off with pornography.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, which is a major issue, right? And some people don't realize the people behind the screen are not there by their own free will. There's many girls and women who've been sucked into the porn industry and they've been victims of sex trafficking.
Well, how do you reduce the demand?
Yeah, good question. I think education is one of them.
So do you do this?
We do. So we go into schools
Okay.
and we educate students about what trafficking is. So that's one way that we work. So hopefully we can prevent future people from looking at pornography and also understand like what to do if they were a victim or what do they do when they're talking to somebody online, because sexting is a big issue. The exploitation that's happening on the internet is horrible. And so we try to give tools to hopefully help them not become a victim of trafficking, and then also to not be buyers in the future. So we reach out to schools and we have presentations that we do. But a lot of it is, I mean, it's hard because it's, in a sense, it's one of like the oldest industries, right? There's prostitution in the Bible.
Right.
And sex trafficking doesn't equal prostitution, but it's part of it.
Right.
There has to be force, fraud, or coercion involved for it to be trafficking.
We work, or starting to work very closely with Youth for Christ.
Yeah.
And I just thought, the idea hit me. Have you ever tried to work with Youth for Christ or that type of organization?
Yeah.
Because they're right there with the teenagers.
Yep, we've had different connections, with Youth for Christ.
Yeah, because we have a fireball we're working with now. He's great.
Right, and trafficking too, it varies. So, people can be vulnerable through the internet, especially with our youth today. And people are, they're gaming, talking to people online that they shouldn't be talking to, sending their private information, and then someone gets a hold of them and ends up selling them. So that's one way it happens here. Others, we have people who've had drug addictions because they are trying to figure out a way to cope with already what's happened in their lives, and then through their drug addiction, they might meet their drug dealer or a boyfriend who ends up becoming a pimp and says, well, I'll help you. I can help you make some extra money. And so that's a way how it happens. Another way is through some people get short on rent, and their landlord says, well, if you don't have, if you're not able to pay, that's all right. If you're not able to pay your rent this month, then I have some other things that you can do.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that here. And also with youth being sold because they might have a family member who's a drug addict and they're letting somebody else come and molest their child, and they get paid for it, whether through drugs or housing or money. So those are the types of things we see. It's not what people see like in the movies with Hollywood. Like it's not like Taken or even the newest movie Sound of Freedom. That's not what we're seeing. The kidnapping does not equal sex trafficking, and but a lot of people will associate, oh, they must have a lot of people who've been kidnapped,
Yeah, right.
And granted, if there is a child who comes up missing, we usually do get a call from law enforcement, and we usually will work with that child for aftercare. But that is not one of the main ways that traffickers use. It's very rare for someone to be kidnapped.
With this open and I don't want to get political, but with this open border like we have now, have you seen an increase in this type of action? Because I understand there's so many children that's coming across all by themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure. We actually have a client who was trafficked through the border.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And so, I mean, we don't see a ton of it here in Muskegon, but I'm sure if we were in Texas, we would be seeing a lot of it, right? But yeah, but they are, if they end up making it up this way, up north to Michigan, we are getting some of those calls.
Well, somebody a few months back told me when they was talking about trafficking, and they said that Michigan was one of the leaders with having the number of cases. Now, I don't know.
And so with that, there's a lot of different information out there, and there's a lot of myths. I have heard that too. There is a myth out there that Michigan is number 2 for trafficking.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Yeah, and so that's been in the news, it's been in the media because people will click on it then. But actually that can be harmful to victims when we say that. Because that statistic was actually taken from a sting operation that was across the nationwide, and Michigan recovered the second amount of victims in that one sting operation. So it doesn't mean that we have more trafficking than another state, for example, but it was just in that one time event we've recovered the second amount of victims. And that could be for any types of reasons, right? And so we had to be careful because I had one client, she was actually trafficked in another country, and she was back here in Michigan, and she saw that statistic, and she goes, I'm not safe here because there's trafficking everywhere, and I could be trafficked again because Michigan's number 2. And just having to share with her, like, that's not actually the case. Yes, trafficking is everywhere, but it was just kind of harmful for her because then it put her more in fear.
Right.
And we have to be really careful with educating too, because it happens, but you know, human trafficking, it just doesn't happen in Muskegon. It's happening in your town, it's happening in all these other cities, but when we bring more awareness to it, we just have to have a lot of education with it, because we don't want people thinking, well, I don't want to come to Muskegon because there's human trafficking there, or I don't want to come to your city because there's human trafficking, when the reality is it's everywhere.
Well, actually, the way you stated, that's a good statistic, because it said that Michigan did the job in picking them up.
Yeah,
off
that's
the
right.
street. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
How do we stand?
7.
7. Okay. We had to limit it right at half hour.
Sure. Well, can I share with you
Surely.
what HOPE stands for?
Sure.
So Jeff and Sue Martina, they founded the organization, and when Sue heard the words HOPE for Hope Project, the Lord was speaking to her about it, and she heard HOPE, and it stood for Houses of Prostitution Emptied, Houses of Prayer Entered, and Houses of Promise Entered. And that's what they really felt called to, was to help with housing. So now we have our first house with the housing adult women that we're working in. That next house for the youth.
For the youth.
Yeah.
I don't want a location, but is it far from here?
No, it's in Muskegon County.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, our houses are located.
Because I know that's.
Right, we can't say where they're located.
Right.
Yeah.
That wisdom I've got. The rest of it, no.
And you know what? It's just a cool God story, even how Hope Project got started. Because so Sue was just spending time in the Lord, reading her Bible, and she got this burden. For whatever reason, the women in the Bible that were labeled as prostitutes stood out to her. And she began to cry and cry and cry, and she just got God's heart for these ladies. And through a course of like many hours of weeping, her husband didn't know what was going on with her, but God was just breaking her heart for this population, and she felt like, well, we have to do something. And they had just heard of sex trafficking, and this is back in 2006. Not a lot of people were talking about trafficking then. Like the first laws for trafficking against it were back in 2000. And so we've come a long way in awareness, but we still have more to do, right? Well, she told her husband, Jeff, like, I feel like we're supposed to start the Hope Project and to help girls and women. And Just like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, like I'm a builder. That's your calling. That's not mine. And so just a funny story. But eventually so they go to a friend's house and, Sue just starts sharing what she feels called, that the Lord's calling her to do to start this ministry. And the friends are like, Jeff, you got to help your wife do this. And he's like, well, I'm not interested. She can do it, but that's not my calling. That's her calling. And they're just like, come on, Jeff, like back up your wife with this. He can be kind of stubborn at times. So they end up going to church, and so they're on their way to church, and they keep on just nagging him about this, and just thinking, how can I get them to shut up? And so he's like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. All right, guys, the first words out of the pastor's mouth at church has to be living water, and he has to say it 3 times, and then I'll start the whole project. And they're like, you can't do that to God. And he's like, well, I just did, right? So they're at church. The worship team gets up. And this is a church that they normally don't go to. The worship team gets up. And then they're about to come down. And the pastor comes out looking really confused on the stage. And he looks out to the audience and he says, living water. And Jeff's like, and he looks to his friend and he has to say it 3 times. And so pastor goes back, and it's almost like he's having a conversation with someone. So obviously the pastor is talking with the Lord, like, what am I doing here? And so he turns back to the congregation and he says, living water. And then again, he just starts laughing to himself. He was like, I don't understand this. But he looks to the congregation and goes, I don't understand this, but living water. And Jeff looks over to his friends and goes, well, I guess we're starting the Hope Project. So the Hope Project was birthed out of that. We're still going strong, and we've had a lot of challenges over the years and growth opportunities, and we're still growing every single day and learning new things. But it is awesome to be able to see lives transformed through this ministry, and to have partners too that come alongside, because we can't do it ourselves. That's something we've learned. Like, I think they've tried that in the beginning. It didn't work very well. And so now we collaborate with so many different agencies and have people that support and partner with us.
That sounds like God, though.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Just real quick.
Yeah.
Several years back, we had a conference.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, we had 2 pastors from Michigan.
Okay.
It was about 40 miles apart. This one had excess in this area, and this one was weak, but this one had excess and this was weak. And they could help each other, but they didn't know each other, and they didn't know what they did.
Huh.
And that's how this got birthed.
Oh.
I thought to myself, what if we had a program that brought ministries together?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and that was a God thing that took place. I had no idea that we was going to do this. 2 minutes, okay. Now, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah.
You got 2 minutes.
Okay, got 2 minutes. Awesome. So if we have people watching who want to get involved in our organization, we have a few different ways that you can do that. You can reach out to our website, which is hopeprojectusa.org. Oh, that's another thing. We opened an office in Newaygo as well. So now we have a Muskegon location and a location in Newaygo County.
Okay.
So that's growth that happened this year. But you can reach out with our website, hopeprojectusa.org. We have a volunteer form if you're interested in volunteering. We also have ways that you can donate. So whether you want to send us some hygiene products to donate that, or donate finances so we can keep the ministry going, those are always great opportunities. Or if you want someone to come and present to your church or to a group that you're with, we have different people who can educate others on the topic of trafficking and what to do and those types of things. But I encourage you to check out our website, because we do have some resources there. And then one thing that I always encourage people to do is to get mad about the issue. So MAD stands for 3 things. You can mentor, whether you become a mentor with us or you mentor youth in your area. Mentor, advocate, and then donate. Those are the main ways to really help with this issue, because it's everywhere. And so whether you donate to us or you can donate to an organization in your area to help fight this injustice.
Well, we thank you.
Yes, thank you.
No, we enjoyed it. Oh, I did anyway.
Yeah, I did
And I
too.
learned enormously today.
Oh, awesome.
And so once again, we invite you to tune in again next week. And we thank you for watching. And may God bless you.